Awesome. Welcome back, everybody, for another Director Spotlight. Today, we are joined with Dena from Daycare Studio. Dena was a childcare director in her church for over 20 years. Together with her husband, they had over 110 kids capacity, and she has recently transitioned into opening Daycare Studio, which is a early childhood consulting company. They provide plenty of material and guidance to people within the early childhood field. So thank you very much, Dena, for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
To get started, if we can just start by you telling us a bit about how you got into early childhood education.
Yeah, so let's see. It's probably the year 1999 or 2000, long time ago. I was a young stay-at-home mom. I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and my husband was in car sales, and we were approached by our church, and they pretty much said, "Hey, we want to build a child care center, and we have no idea what to do, and we need someone to kind of build it, learn how to operate it, get us licensed and run it, and can you guys help?" And we thought about it and prayed about it a little bit, and we thought, okay, we don't know what we're doing, but we can do this. So we just kind of dove in, and we kind of took it step by step, and we started from scratch, and we did design and licensing and the construction and marketing and staffing and enrolling and everything in between, and somehow managed to open in 2001. And yeah, we did that for 21 years. We built a really, what we like to say is a nurturing, loving environment for our families and staff. And we had a wait list 2 years long, and we had loyal staff that was with us for many years, and we were pretty much a pillar in the community. So, and wow. Yeah, and I say, and I'm kind of transitioned into past tense a little bit, because last year we did transition. We have a sister school located right next to us. It's a private Christian school, and they were pretty much expanding, and they were looking for more space. So we decided to merge with them, and it pretty much eliminated our early childhood department doing that. So it was a little bit of a tough transition, but it allowed me to step away and focus more on helping other owners and directors. And then it gave me time to spend with my new little 2 grandbabies that I have. So, it's a pretty good deal.
Wow. You went full cycle from getting into the industry with your own young children, and now you're stepping away from it with your own grandchildren. How beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. And kind of funny story on our young children. Right before we were approached about opening a center, my husband his car had broke down in front of a childcare center. And this was back in days where he had like a pager. He didn't even have like a cell phone. It was before cell phone days. So he walked into a childcare center, and he came home and told me, he said, I walked into this childcare center to use the phone, and the lady was rude, and there was a kid crying their eyes out behind the desk. And he was like, "I hope you never want to put our kids in daycare, because I do not like those places, and we can never have our kids." And I was like, "Absolutely. I would never have my child in a place like that." And then, fast forward a few months, we were approached by doing this. So, I mean, we were pretty much like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, it's going to be the best ran center possible. And then, of course, with all of the knowledge I have now, looking back, I mean, the rude lady that he said was rude probably had 3 people call in, and the child behind the desk probably had just thrown a tantrum, and she was probably frazzled, and it probably wasn't a bad center at all. Things happen. Yep. And I know that now. Perspective.
Now, exactly. With your personal firsthand experience, you can definitely have a bit more empathy than.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Wow. Wonderful. So I'm curious, you were approached without having any prior experience. Was there a moment in time that you realized, you were in the right space? This was the thing you wanted to continue doing for those following 21 years?
Yeah, I wouldn't think it definitely wasn't in the beginning. It was more just survival mode in the beginning, trying to just figure everything out. We just took it one step at a time. Okay, we got to do this. We got to do this. Attending like every licensing meeting that we could get into that our state would offer, and kind of fumbled our way through it. In the beginning, the first few years were a little rough, but I mean, after we started getting our bearings and learning some systems and processes, and everything started working a little smoother, just building those connections with the families and the staff, and watching the kids, grow and learn and develop. And we were like, wow, this is really powerful. It was definitely something that was developed over time, but yeah, it definitely grew into a passion and what we felt like was a calling for sure.
Wonderful. And did you have any prior experience at, a degree or anything of the sorts in early childhood education?
No, not any formal training. I mean, your typical had my own kids, babysit, that kind of thing. Never thought in a million years that I would go into ECE. I mean, we had to do crash courses on, the director's courses and trainings, and then I got, TCC and certificate, and we just started as we did the bare minimum to get like in the door, and then as time went on, started furthering our education. But we had no clue. I mean, I was probably 20, I think I was 25 when we opened, so I definitely felt unqualified for sure. It was a little intimidating at first, just having to all of a sudden lead people and get into the hiring, and then giving tours and all of those things, dealing with parents. It was a little overwhelming, but I mean, the more you do it, the easier it got for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. So on that note, what would what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about getting into the early childhood education space or being a director themselves?
So as far as becoming a director or opening a center, I mean, of course you need to be in the early childhood world for sure. I would definitely say if you've never been in that kind of environment, you need to get your foot in the door, see how it works. I mean, I have had staff come to me in the past and say, I love kids, so I want to be an ECE. And it's a little bit different. Just because, you babysit your nephew doesn't mean you can handle a group of young children, but definitely get into the world, learn how it works, see the environment, see if it's something that you really want to do before you get into ECE, as far as working in it as a childcare professional. If you want to become a director, same, get your foot in the door, learn it. I mean, if you're looking to open your own center, I would say you have to dive in, study, learn all those regulations, and know what policies you want to set from the beginning, set clear defined policies. And yeah.
And those are things that you help new directors and directors in general with at Daycare Studio, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I help set policies. And I mean, I actually have templates. I have like a policies and procedures template that kind of gives an outline of the policies. And I talk about that in my blogs and stuff too. But I have
and you want to just share out your website so people can find you?
It's daycarestudio.net. And I have lots of freebies on there that you can download, and lots of templates that you can purchase as well. And then if you can sign up to be on my email list, and I just email out weekly content that just helps. Yeah.
Wonderful. So is there a specific quality you think or trait that a successful childcare director has?
So I mean, I really think as far as qualities, I think you really have to be empathetic. You have to have patience. You have to be resilient. You have a lot come at you for sure. As far as skills, I think you have to have great communication skills, which those can be developed. But I mean, you're communicating daily with parents and staff, and sometimes it's on delicate matters. So if you're not communicating, you're going to have issues, or if you don't word things right. So communication is important. I think it's important that you can learn how to problem solve, because you're thrown things every day from all directions. You have staff that might call in sick. You have a concerned parent. You have state show up at your door. You have to learn to think quick and respond quick. And then I also think it's important that that you have great leadership skills, and that takes time too, just to develop the leadership. And not so much I think we're really good in our centers at managing, or we try to be, as far as just working on the scheduling and the paperwork and all of those day-to-day operations, just trying to get through the day. But I feel like where we lack is in our leadership ability to innovate and inspire and influence and remind our staff of why they're important and why they're doing what they're doing, just becoming that leader to actually lead people, I think is very important.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great. And so you had capacity for up to 110 students, correct?
Yes, it was actually a fairly small center. And to give you a little more insight on that, it's actually, it's still in operation. So sometimes I'm like, it looks, it's still there, but it looks like a big boat. So it's designed after Noah's Ark in the Bible. So we actually got with an architect and had him design it. And he supposedly took 1/3 the size of the real Noah's Ark dimensions. I don't know if that's true or not. And then
that's a very fun place for kids to walk into every day. It just kind of inspires.
Build a gigantic boat. So, and of course, because we didn't have really like a plan, like we didn't have a plan that you can buy specifically for childcare centers. I mean, we were like pulling out the graph paper and trying to, measure the rooms and all the specs that you have to do with licensing. And so we kind of did it backwards as far as we kind of decided the size of the building, and then we graphed it all out and then said, oh, okay, well, we can hold 110. Looking back on it, if we had to do it differently, it probably should have been a little bit bigger to be a little more profitable. But I mean, 110, still 110 kids every day. It's,
Wow.
it's a lot.
What were your processes like to deal with 110 kids? Were you using technology in any capacity?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, we started using technology from the beginning. We had a childcare software. We used childcare software management all the way from the beginning to do, billing and our tuition, accounts, enrollments, staffing, immunization, attendance, pretty much anything to do with record keeping went through the software. And then in time, we incorporated the app, a few years later down the road, where parents could sign in and out their children through the app, and they loved that. And then we gave all the teachers tablets. And then, of course, the kids, they had a little bit of time that they could use on the tablets, but the tablets were primarily for the teachers to communicate with parents, and send pictures and do lessons and all of that kind of thing. I mean, I could not imagine running a center without some kind of software to help, for sure. The paperwork is just ridiculous.
Yeah. We're talking the same language. We definitely agree with you on that. It just makes it a lot easier to spend the time actually taking care of the kids and creating a great experience and, providing that leadership instead of spending time collecting paperwork, for sure.
For sure.
Awesome. And so I'm curious, what would you tell yourself now, or what would you tell yourself 21 years ago that you know now, with all those years of experience running your center?
Like maybe something that I didn't know.
Yeah. What would you, if you were, when you walked in to start this 21 years ago, what's a piece of advice you've given yourself?
Let's see. I would have said, learn how to lead, for sure. Don't overthink everything. Just jump in, because I'm very much an overthinker. I'm very much a planner. I have to have everything planned out, and you pretty much just learn from experience. I would have told myself, just a warning, the parents and staff are tougher than the children. I mean, I even have now, I would have people tell me all the time, oh, you work in a childcare center. Oh my gosh, working with all those kids is so tough, right? And I'm like, no, the kids are easy. It's the adults that are the challenge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I would have told myself just to give myself grace also, because I mean, you're just not going to know everything starting off, but just the more you do it, the more you learn, the more you develop, the easier it gets, for sure.
Great. And in terms of your team, you said you had a pretty loyal staff, and it seems like people were pretty happy to be there. I'm just curious how you fostered that environment and made your staff really feel like part of a family.
So we did daily check-ins. We prioritized our we really tried to prioritize our staff. And we would walk through the classrooms every morning. We'd take 10 to 15 minutes every morning and every afternoon and say, hey, we're so glad to see you today. What do you need? We're here to support you. What can I do to help you? What can I do to make your job easier? Is there anything you need? Just checking in with them, letting them really know that we are here for them. We're here to support them. And then working on that culture, being that great leader to motivate and inspire, and working on consciously working on our culture, building our culture, having fun activities. And I have a whole culture framework that I could go into, but it might take a minute. But yeah, really building the culture and checking in with them, and just really showing them love, support, and encouragement, being there for them is pretty much what we strive to do.
Yeah, I'd love to hear in a high level, and in that 1 minute, a bit more about that culture aspect. I'm sure our listeners would be interested.
Yeah, so I came up with a pretty much I call it the amazing culture formula. And so I just share it with other owners and directors who are having a hard time with their culture, because I don't feel like it's really one particular thing that you can do that just transforms your environment. I like to think of it as kind of like a spoke or a wheel, and you have your leadership in the middle. With your inspiring leadership, you have to have great leadership, and that is the most important. And without that, pretty much everything else is in vain, I feel like. And then you have to have that goes around that to support that is you have to have your core values. You have to have, those principles and standards, what you feel like your center stands for, so that your team can unify and say, this is what we're going toward. This is what we're working toward. And then you also have to have flexibility. You need to give your teachers freedom in the classrooms to maybe tweak their schedule, to do some curriculum enrichment, add some crafts and activities and ideas, give them a little bit of freedom. And then also flexibility in their work schedule if you can. This was something that I did. We offered unlimited time off with a 7 days notice. If they came to me and said, hey, I need time off, I didn't ask questions. If I had normally it was 2 to 3 people. I had a rule, I could have that many people off. And if the calendar permitted it, I would say, sure, no problem. I wouldn't say, hey, you were off 2 weeks ago. I would say, sure, no problem. And if they had paid time, they had personal time, they could use it. If not, they would take it off without pay. And it pretty much eliminated a lot of those call-ins and those last minute call-ins, because they didn't feel the beat down anytime they told me they needed to take off. And I would just always overhire to compensate and to fill in the gaps. And people just felt like they had a life, they could make that appointment and let me know if they needed off, and I'd let them. So flexibility is crucial. Community is important. Building that community. We had a private Facebook group that we posted in and gave staff shout outs and spotlights, and we would go volunteer at places and do team bonding things together to really build that. And then it's also important to empower your staff. So promote from within, give them the tools, resources that they need. Also assign them tasks and responsibilities, and maybe even give them titles. You can make up titles, teacher, mentor, curriculum coordinator, break room manager, whatever. And those can be
Nice.
compensated or not. And then after empower, I would say giving and fun, those 2 things together. Always have an attitude of giving. I'm here for you. I'm here to support you, not I'm in the receiving mode, but I'm in the giving mode. What can I do to help you? And then have lots and lots of fun. We had employee Easter egg hunts every year where they would hunt eggs and get prizes. We did costume contest, and we had a scare initiation for our new staff if they could handle it, didn't have a heart attack. On like day 2 or 3, we would like jump out and scare them. We would send them to our dumbwaiter, which is like a mini elevator, because we had like a 2-story buildings, and we would find a reason for them to go get something out of the dumbwaiter, and then somebody would be in there and scare them. And then of course we would host it if we could. It was fun. If it was somebody that we'd have to get to know them a little bit. So if we felt like they couldn't handle it, we would like ditch.
Yeah.
But we had tons and tons of fun. And I think that's super important. I just think it takes, all of those things, because poor working environment is one of the biggest reasons that somebody leaves a company. So I think work culture is huge.
Yeah. It sounds like you found a great, structure to make a great work culture.
Yeah. I feel like we did. I mean, it was still work. It wasn't perfect by any means, but we really
Self-care
strived.
definitely helps.
Yeah. And I really feel like you have to consciously work at it because it's really easy to ignore it. And if you're not consciously working to improve it, it's slowly dying. I mean, it's not going to improve. You're either going backwards or you're going forwards. So
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, all the years of leading that team, you really got it to a place where you can teach a lot of people. So it sounds like you have plenty of knowledge to share in your daycare studio, new adventure. And I'm curious, one last question before we wrap up. What's your perspective on challenges facing the early childhood education industry as someone who works with directors and owners all day? What do you see as the challenges?
I would say right now, one of the biggest challenges that I hear that people are facing is staffing shortages for sure. You always have your, conflict resolution and people talking about how to deal with parents and some enrollment issues. But I mean, a lot of the centers and the people I'm talking to right now, they're not having an issue with enrollment or filling up their center. They're having a problem with getting staff in the door or keeping them. So yeah, I mean, I would say to overcome that, you pretty much have to offer competitive wages. You got to have some creative advertising, marketing to get them in the door, offer them some competitive wages, and then do whatever it takes to be able to afford to pay that. And then you got to have proper onboarding and training. You can't just throw them in the room and because you're desperate. I mean, I've done that. Everybody's done that, I'm sure. You get desperate and you just need a body, but you've got to properly onboard and train them. And then you got to work on that culture. I mean, it takes a little bit of everything to get those staff and to retain them. But I mean, it can be done. It's just a little more challenging now than I feel like it has been in years past, for sure.
So would you say a solution to that problem is just building that culture, that marketing, and making? I mean, I feel like a big part of it's also just competitive salaries. It seems like it's early childhood in general is very underpaid.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I mean, in general, it's low paying. I mean, you can get a job at McDonald's making more than you can, working with developing young children's lives. I mean, it's really sad. But yeah, I encourage people to do research about the centers around them, find out what they're paying, and you need to be paying at least $1 to $3 higher than that if you're able to do so. And then you need to get with your accountant and say, this is what I need to pay. This is what the payroll looks like. And this is, how do I get there? And of course, that is probably going to look like raising tuition. And but you can also do things to cut expenses to be able to afford that. But I mean, you have to be able to, you can't expect to have quality staff that are going to be loyal and hardworking and show up every day, paying them minimum wage and expect them to stay. It's not, we could have done that years ago. We did get away with doing that years ago, but we can't do that now, so.
Yeah.
But pay is not everything. I mean, the pay is not the number one. It's not the end all be all, but you do combine that with your, like I said, your culture and your just work environment. But it is definitely important.
Yep. Wonderful. And so where do you see early childhood education going in the United States? It's a bit of a broad question, but are you feeling hopeful? Are you, feeling frustrated? What's your general sentiment?
I mean, I definitely think it's changing. But I mean, the bottom line is I don't think it's going anywhere. I mean, it's definitely different than it was years ago. But I mean, people still have to have jobs. People are still working. It's still in high demand. I don't think that's going anywhere. I just think we need to make pivots when they come, and continue to just offer that excellent quality childcare. And I don't think we're going to have any issues as far as filling up our centers by any means. I mean, if anything, We're having the opposite now. And I know there are more people working from home, but it's not going to affect anything. And if anything, during COVID, we had so many centers that closed. So, I mean, that's why a lot of centers now they have a waiting list long. There's parents trying to find childcare and they can't. So I think we'll be around for a while.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, childcare is very important. Hopefully, solutions are brought to the table, both, from the inside and also with maybe some government help.
For sure. For sure.
Alleviate some of the challenges that we're all facing.
Yes, for sure.
Wonderful. Well, Dena, that concludes our interview today. I'm very thankful for you to join us. And it was very interesting to hear about, the arc that you were sailing.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And it was a pleasure. It was nice talking with you.
Thank you very much.